This screwdriver we can use to be able to remove the lower target on the upper panel, and we're going to fish this gray cable. These sensor cables are not used, so you'll just leave them inside as such. However, you need to fit the gray cable, fit it into the upper panel as such, and now we're going to need to remove this target, and we're going to make this connection so that our panel is activated. And you always want to do these screws by hand. This is never something that you should use a electric driver for. These are stainless steel screws that go into aluminum standoffs. It is very easy to strip them, both the head of it itself, because it's a number 4 screw, but it's also very easy to strip the aluminum standoff of the threads itself. But once it is loosened, you do not need to remove the other cable or the sensor that is connected to it, but we will just go ahead and plug on, and you can see here there's even color codes for us. You can see that we've got the red cable connected to the red one, and we're going to take our green terminal and we're going to connect it to the green header. Make sure that you see a good snap in like that. Everything is secure. Our sensor cable hasn't been disturbed. The green is connected to green, the red is connected to red. And now we can reinstall it back on our standoffs. What we're going to do right now is we're going to do a bench test of our 2 panels, and then we're going to go ahead and put our covers on to keep it clean while we're mounting our remote display box and while we're routing our cables through the conduit. Because we're going to be drilling more holes in the wall, we're going to be making more dust, and so as soon as if we want to get these covered right now, we won't get any of that dust inside of our panels. Before we cover those panels, we want to run a test to make sure all our sensors and lights are working. We've taken our master control box and we're going to go ahead and just plug it in. From shorting our speaker cables, I'm going to disconnect our 2 speaker cables from right here as well, because we're not going to hook up our speakers for this test. That's something we can troubleshoot after we have our system installed. Now we've got power ready to be switched on. Our 2 panels, we've just plugged them in to the power interconnect here, and we're going to switch on the master controller box. These outer 4 sensors on the very outside corners of the upper and the lower panel, those are where these cables are going to, and they're not used at this time. So for now, I'm going to tap the sensor that is either just above or just below. Touch it very, very softly. You do not have to do much. You can even, hey, usually yell at it and it goes off, but not right now. So for this part, again, I'm using that drill with a very low torque setting to it, and if you notice, I'm going to get those first 2 screws in, and I'm just going to barely start them. And the reason I've got that torque setting so low is if I start to strip one of those screws, if I start to go in at a not correct angle, what you're going to see is that it stops me from putting it in. So it'll actually stop you from stripping one of those screws, because if you're not going in correctly, the clutch on a light powered drill like this is going to keep from stripping that. Get those first 2 screws and just get them so they're resting on top of the head of the screw themselves, and then proceed to put every single screw in, but only starting them. Install them in about halfway. Once you have the lower panel installed, you're going to now begin to install the upper panel. Make sure you do it while the lower panel is still loose, because you want this upper cover to rest on that lower cover. I'll rest it upon there. My knee is keeping it resting on top of the upper panel. Know that my cable is all fully clear off to one side. And now, I'm going to install my top 2 screws. And now it's safe, and you can go around, install the rest of your screws halfway. To make sure that you get a nice even line right across where the 2 panels join, because that's what most people will see, I like to begin by doing these 2 screws together. So we're going to hold the center of the panel, and I'm going to go ahead and just work my way out. I'm going to come to the lower one, make sure that the screw heads are all nicely recessed, hold the center of our panel in very firm, do these 2. I want to make sure that we have a nice clean seam where our 2 covers come together. And again, you're hearing how that clutch is stopping me from over tightening those screws as well. I also take with me a number 1032 tap, so that if, let's say, I did strip one of my fasteners, I can actually run this tap through the metal panel and it'll reform that thread so I can put that screw in correctly. Now you'll probably need to replace that screw, but you won't need to replace the panel if you run that tap through there.